I'm Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. But I'm right back in. I don't know. I think I really like that one. I know we've been messing around with the, what do they call them? Intro videos and the outro videos. I think we've got something pretty good there. And just let me know if you guys, especially the ones that have been here for the last 4 or 5 months, give some input if it's not perfect. Anyway, so Michael Tierno. Oh, see, I would Barbie, producer Barbie, her last name is Rodarte, and I always call her Rodarte because I love the speaking of names. And Michael here is as I have been saying all week, is bringing a message that is really exciting, especially for me, because it's also personal. I shared a little bit of that with Michael back in the green room. And so I think we're going to even have a better, more interesting session than I originally considered. So I'm going to bring Michael on stage. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really well. How you doing, Rod? Thanks for having me on.
I'm really doing well. And I did butcher that name, even though we went over it in the green room. Didn't I?
You did pretty good.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm feeling good about it. So we were talking, your journey, your path, your mission, the things that have brought you to this time, meaning over the last moments that this became part of your life, right? That journey is fascinating, and your mission is really something that I'm interested in. So, like I always ask, let's start at the beginning. What brought you there? A little upbringing, and psychedelics is, I know it's awesome. I don't. Do you know Sedona, Arizona, by any chance?
I've not been there, but I do definitely know of it. I know it's one of the quote unquote sacred sites in the world. Yeah, energy portal, vortexes, all that woo-woo stuff.
Exactly. So I first learned about not taking it, but really started getting interested in certain things that the mind, when guided through, can really open up and be honest and free with yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to, a bunch of people, wow, they got on quick today. Holy crap. All right. Hey, we're going to have some questions here in a little bit, I'm sure, but
absolutely.
Fill in everything I missed and correct the things I was way off on. How's that? Is that a fair deal?
Sure. I don't think that you've said anything incorrectly or been off on anything. I like to talk about expanded states in general rather than psychedelics in particular. Why is that? Because expanded states are just anything that expand your state of consciousness, right? And psychedelics is one very powerful, intentional way we can have it. We talked in the green room a little bit about, your accident and your health conditions that you've been struggling with. And that itself is an expanded state where you can drop out of the ideas that you maybe have had about your life and whatnot, and then look at yourself with a deeper sense of clarity. All that stuff drops away and you're like, wow, I've been paying attention to the wrong things. I've been thinking about things in the wrong way.
Right.
And wrong, use that word cautiously, but I've been thinking about things in maybe the least optimal way or less optimal way. And so whenever we have these profound expanded state experiences, they can bring us to greater clarity in terms of what we want, in terms of purpose for our lives, in terms of where we want to be, how we want to be in the world, that kind of thing. So, you hear this a lot with people who have been diagnosed with cancer and have a terminal illness. All of a sudden, what's important in your life comes into like stark relief. You're like, whoa, I've been paying attention to the wrong thing. How do I want to live the rest of my life? And expanded states, including work with psychedelics, can do that, does that regularly for people who can do that in a safe and contained environment where they know what they're doing with ideally with somebody who knows what what they're doing in this space to make sure that
a guide, right? The
a
name,
guide.
a guide. Okay, yeah, and that's critical, right?
I believe it's certainly critical in the beginning. Certainly critical in the beginning. You can get experienced, over time to be able to be comfortable in that sort of peak experience state. But that does take practice because, especially using the classic psychedelics, the experience is so
really different, right?
So different. Imagine, and, depending on how deep you go. But my first experience, for example, I went to Peru.
Beautiful.
It wasn't like this. I just found out about this stuff, and I was going there not totally knowing what I was getting into. Prior to that, I was like, I didn't have a spiritual bone in my body, and where I didn't acknowledge all that stuff. I was really like physicalist, metaphysics, in terms of like believing that there's just atoms and we're just like these robots running around the world, these meat suits that just kind of like react to the stimulus response kind of thing. And then when I went down there, I had the profound experience that many people have talked about having, and it changed my life. Like really changed my perspective on so many things.
You want to dig into that a little bit?
Sure.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
What is that that moment? When is that time in Peru? Because Peru is, I talked about Sedona, but Peru is very it's a beautiful country, right? And you went there to start your experience, right?
Yeah. I've been
They're
there
big on that.
a dozen times. The background that I have here, if you've seen this on the video, is the Sacred Valley. You mentioned Sedona as one of those vortex places. The Sacred Valley of Peru is another one of those vortex places, important places. Mount Shasta, other places all over the world that are continuing.
Oh, I didn't know Mount Shasta was.
Oh yeah. They have gatherings of indigenous people from all over the Americas go there every, I don't know how many years to like do things. These like sites are peppered around the world, and it could be because of their beauty. It could just be like, if you want to get non-spiritual about it could just be because there's spectacularly beautiful places. Just shut off my screen for 1 second. I mean, look at that valley. Ooh. It's absolutely beautiful. I turn off my camera, you can see my background. Okay. But
you know what?
Get an idea of how beautiful it is.
I was fair to you. I told you I was going to play. And you got me. Oh, you set me up there, brother. Okay, that is gorgeous, though. Absolutely gorgeous. Love that. Go ahead. Sorry.
So people are attracted to beautiful places in Sedona, Shasta. They're all beautiful places. So distracted by the question here.
I think we're a little ahead of that coming in, right? Because that's the male masculinity, MOI, right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah. So Men of Integrity is retreats that we run here in the United States for men. And actually, we are going to be running not the same exact team, but the same protocol and the same program or related program. We're going to start with women at the end of 2025. Having our first women's retreat. That will be women-led, but a similar program and package. But it started organically, the project, after I'd been involved with going to Peru and pursuing my own path. A very close friend of mine, Yoni Havana, and myself, experimentally, playing around with these things together, came up with this kind of program, and we've run it 12 or 13 times now, and it's been quite powerful, both for the transformation it's had on the participants, which is super amazing, and testimonials are available on our social media. I'm not a social media platform, our websites, but also just the community that we've built, because there's 40 guys strong now. That have been through it. Some of them have come to the multiple retreats, and something that's different. It's fine. Something that's different is that in a lot of retreat settings for these kinds of things, you're kind of like, you do the retreat and then you're left. There might be a little bit of post integration afterwards, but we put you in, to the extent that people want to continue to participate in community, we have like a Telegram group and we do monthly support calls. And so we're a fairly close-knit team of guys.
Let me grab you for a second there. Keep in mind this is for the whole middle class. I know what Telegram is because I actually use it because I'm using some automation. It's a really good tool, and it's getting bigger and bigger. But a lot of people my age, Telegram. What?
Telegram? It's basically fancy texting. It's a platform like you probably have heard of WhatsApp. Telegram is.
I have used it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So Telegram is just another messaging platform that has some features like documents and stuff that we can share.
I'm gonna kind of roll backwards on this a little bit because there's a bunch of really interesting, but one that is right where you are, MOI. There we go. I'm going to have to jump around here a little bit because the questions aren't, you know what I mean? They're coming in from all centers of the earth. Anyway, go ahead.
You want to ask a question or something like that? I mean, I'm distracted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why do you think modern men are drawn to retreats like MOI now more than ever? And I think, doesn't that some of that have to do with the evolution of men being looked at by society over the last number of years, right? I mean, there's got to be a difference in numbers, and maybe men are starting to be able to open up that they haven't been able to before. What are your thoughts there on that one?
Yeah, two lines of thinking there. First line of thinking is at least in indigenous cultures, there's always some sort of rite of passage that brings almost always with the men and sometimes also with the women in the tribe or the community. And that's something that in the Western culture, we don't have very many rites of passage. Maybe marriage is kind of a rite of passage. There's a ceremonial aspect to it. There's something that most people go through, that kind of thing. But in terms of a ceremony, in Judaism, they have the bat mitzvah and the bar mitzvah and whatnot. That could be a rite of passage. But that's something that's missing.
Quinceañera. Quinceañera. Sorry. And then the how do I say it? The white folks, let's just say, don't really have that. Really, do not have a ceremony of, except for slightly. And I'm going to say this just to announce again for this one. Sweet 16. That's kind of a coming out, but only when you're at certain stage. I mean, it's not like everybody does that, and it should, because that's kind of cool. That coming out.
And I would contrast those type of quinceañera and a Sweet 16 kind of thing, contrast that to a traditional rite of passage, because at least in many societies, I mean, we've heard about these National Geographic and stuff, sending a boy out into the forest to go have essentially a terrifying experience.
Oh my God, total difference. I get where you're going. Go ahead.
I mean? Something that really brings you to your core. So whatever you think of you is something that is an ability to get shattered, so that you get to like a deeper layer of who is you. What is you? What is your what's going on? Like, what is going on? What's going on with this vessel in the world? And that's something that's missing from our Western society. We don't have anything like that for boys. It's just kind of maybe go to college, go to trade school, get a job, whatever, and off you go. And there's no kind of handing off of a baton from one generation to the next. And that's something that these retreats, like ours, there is a very deep, introspective, transformational sort of protocol that's involved with that brings you from who you thought you are into a deeper level of awareness and a deeper level of being. That's part A. So a rite of passage for modern people. Part B, you were talking about being more open and more kind of like there being space now for men to be more vulnerable. That is also part of this and part of our mission. It is, I can't tell you how many guys have come to our retreat initially saying that they go around in the world sort of being scared of other men, about how to be in a group of other men, what they can share, what they can't share. The whole tough guy thing. And immediately we set that protocol and that container such that they're like, oh wow, I can really talk about these issues that I've been holding on to tightly for so much of my life, and kind of express them, unpack them, and work through them in a vulnerable way. And then when they come home, they've now practiced this in an intensive way.
How long? What's we talking a week, or is it vary?
MOI retreats 4 days long.
4 days long. Gotcha. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You're immersed in it for 4 days.
Not a ton of rest.
Okay.
Not a ton. We have it very well timed. We've done it so many times. It's like clockwork for the guides and the facilitators. But we have workshop. It's not just, expanded states experiences, and then you're just left to your own. There's, group circles, council, workshops, and all these other things that we have peppered through the 4 days that keep it busy, keep it interesting, and adding layers of information as well for when you go out into the world. You have something to work on. Relationships, male and female relationships, is a big part of the program.
I was reading about that. That's really important and really needed, because we pick a mate. I'm going to say rough words here. We pick a mate and then we go through the process, and then half of us or more, I think it's up to 60, almost 60% divorce. And obviously many, many, many years before that, there wasn't that connection, or it is now gone. This was one thing that you were talking about. I was really, really interested. And then would you jump into or roll from there, that the relationship, because that's a big deal. Everybody on here probably has one. Mm-hmm. How can someone tell if they're ready for a guided psychic journey? So just to throw it back at you there.
I think the best thing to do is to actually talk to a guide, find a guide and talk to a guide, and have them sort of vet you in terms of if you're ready for transformation. I mean, these done in the right set and setting, very safe. The safety profile's super good. Done in the wrong set and setting, things could go squirrely, right? Just because, and thought loops and getting not knowing, not having had an experience like it, you could feel that maybe something's wrong and not have anybody there to reassure you anything. So, in the right set and setting, very safe. But the best thing to do would be to talk to somebody, because no guide worth their salt is just gonna, just bring you in without assessing you. There's some contraindications, some psychological and physical health issues that would be contraindicated, but they're small, they're rare. Some medications that would have to be looked at and maybe tapered off with the support of a physician or a pharmacist. All that, a good guide can help you through all of those processes to get you to the point where this is a good fit or not a good fit. But really, if you're looking for transformation of any sort, it's I would say like 90% of people could probably, ready is also another kind of word that could mean a lot of things. But if you're ready for like connecting more deeply with your own self, I would say you're ready. Now, are you physically and psychologically, in a position to be able to do one of these journeys? And that would be assessed by a guide, somebody who you'd be working with.
That's an excellent point. So we're going to jump back and forth a little bit with MOI and because we're getting back and forth messages, and it's like a tennis match we're doing, right? Boop, knock it over to you, boop, knock it back. So I apologize about kind of getting a little choppy here, but what's the biggest misconception of, and this is the one I'm really interested in, ayahuasca, right?
Ayahuasca. Yeah.
Ayahuasca.
Biggest misconception about ayahuasca. Ayahuasca.
Gotcha. That you'd like to clear up.
Yeah. I think the question that most people are like really concerned about, that are, you know, wondering whether they should go to Peru and try ayahuasca with, you know, in a vetted, safe, reputable center, is they're concerned about the purge. They think that their idea of purging or like vomiting, you know, is when they've had too much to drink and they feel terrible and nauseous and all that kind of stuff. And there is a physical purge that comes with ayahuasca for about 70% of people in any ceremony, right? And that purge, in terms of a vomit type purge, but it feels totally different from the, like an alcohol, you drank too much booze kind of purge.
I've heard of this
before. It doesn't feel it. Yeah. And it's different. There's kind of an energetic component. I can give you an example of a purge that I remember that was really profound for me. It was about 6 years ago, and there was all these, you know, the news was just peppered every day with these school shootings, and where you feel powerless about it. And then since you're powerless, there's nothing that you can feel, or this is from my perspective, I felt powerless. You'd see it, you'd be peppered in it, thinking about the parents and the families and all these people of all these little kids that were getting shot at all these schools and stuff. There was like a kind of epidemic of this for like 4 or 5 months. And
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. And I went to a retreat. I went to a ceremony, and I was just going about my business, and all of a sudden, when the walls dropped away, I realized that I've been carrying this sadness about these school shootings that I couldn't do anything about. And I felt it tingling. I felt like the sadness in my body that was being held there. And I wasn't able to really identify it because there was nothing I could do. And all of a sudden I felt the sadness and this mal experience coming up my arms, and then just leaving my body into the bucket. It was super light. And I was like, whoa, that was all in there, and now it's out of there. And it was just this big sense of relief, identification of what was in there emotionally that I've been holding on to, and then the release of that emotional energy into the purge bucket. It's also something that's also interesting that I've noticed. You know, you'd think you'd be in a group with 10 or more people, many people are throwing up, and it doesn't smell like vomit because it doesn't have the same properties to it. It doesn't smell like a bunch of people. Makes sense. I asked one a shaman once about that, and he said, "You know what? I never thought about that. That's a good point. Why doesn't it smell like a vomitorium?" And I don't know why. But the purge also, can come through tears, come through laughter. It can come through, the purge is just an emotional release. So people that are really concerned about vomiting or diarrhea, just know that it's not what you think it is. And the purge for ayahuasca can come through many different channels. It's just an emotional release. Your body's kind of really resetting and giving up some of this emotional charge that it might have been holding on to, which gives you a lot of like relief.
Does that come in like more earlier on, or is it different for everybody, or all of a sudden there's this point in time where your body now needs whatever type of purge? Does that purge, or does it vary?
It varies. You'll hear people purging at different times. Usually it's in the, like, I would say if there was like a peak time. It's kind of interesting because a good shaman or curandero or ayahuasquero will have a song to kind of bring on the purge. And so there's like a point in the experience oftentimes where someone will start purging, and the person who's singing the songs will all of a sudden switch to a song that induces it. It's very, very bizarre. A lot of this from my Western kind of like skeptical framework, the things I've experienced and seen in terms of like the interface between the music and ceremony and what's going on in ceremony. Some of it's just like so wild. I don't have like a rational way to explain it. I just know that I've seen it. And because I speak Spanish, sometimes I oftentimes when the songs are in Spanish, I know what they're saying, and there's songs about purging, about releasing and all this kind of stuff. And so you'll hear somebody purge, and then shaman will change tracks and start singing the purge song, and then before you know it, there's like 5 people, 6 people, 7 people all purging in harmony.
Well, you always hear about, and I know for a fact that music has a vibration that affects you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does. So it's kind of that concept, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then the second part of what you said is kind of like when you're on a fishing boat out in the ocean, and one goes, the next goes, the next goes, the next goes, right?
Yeah.
That's a really bad comparison, but I could not just let that go. That was too funny to just let go. What are some small ways? Now, I think we started on this, Branson, but I think we never really embraced it. And most of the rest, it looks like there's about 4 or 5 more. Most of the rest of the questions are about masculinity and how we can deal through the program you're talking about, especially coming over the last number of years. Now, there was a second part to a point you were making a long time ago. We got sidetracked. You said the first point is, and then the second point, is that somewhere you want to?
Well, the second point was actually related to this question. The first point was about rites of passage. The second point was about vulnerability and some of these softer parts of being that are oftentimes kind of more suppressed in men, right? So we call it that way.
Yep.
Softer parts of being that are often suppressed in men. And then looking on the other side, I want to say that some harder parts of being, not harder parts of being, sorry, more agentic, let's use the word agentic parts of being that are sometimes suppressed in women, right? So
what's agentic?
Having agency in your life. So
having agency. Yeah, I've heard that. Hey, I'm sorry, real quick. I've heard agency, having an agency in life. That's a newer term. What does that mean, really quick? I hope I'm not throwing you off too bad.
No, you're not throwing me off. So agency is like feeling that you are the maker of your
makes sense.
Of your life.
Your life, right? Of your being, of your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in general, like the masculine, the positive masculine or divine masculine archetype has to do with agency and going out into the world and causing and bringing order into the world, sort of, in a general thing, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So and men in general, when they're in the positive aspect, are kind of more individual kind of focused and more task focused. Men are not very good. The research shows men are not very good at multitasking compared to women, right? Women are more relational and open, see more stuff in the environment, and they can handle more things at once. And that's just kind of a difference. And that does not to say that there's no men that can multitask or women that aren't super focused on something. Just in general, if you take 2 populations and you separate them on gender, you're going to find that one population, the means of these 2 characteristics are going to be a little bit off, right? So in general, what happens in society, in Western society, in our society, has happened, especially a couple generations ago, becoming less and less, is that sort of open relational sort of communion expressiveness been pushed out of guys. If you tell guys don't be a little boy is being very kind of gentle or soft or nurturing, and dad tells them don't be a blank. We don't want that. And in order to please
don't
dad,
be a pussy.
I don't know what you could say on the show. Don't be pussy.
Yeah, we don't jump. I appreciate that, by the way. We don't jump, but every once in a while, a word comes out. I mean, it's a word. It's a description. I'm not being rude to anybody here. So
yeah. So you
not every other word, but every once in a while.
So we'll use it one more time, just for effect. But little boy's being nurturing and caring and gentle and loving, and his dad or somebody or his friends or something like, hey, don't be a pussy, right? And in order to get approval, I got to do the opposite of those things. So instead of being, intuitive, flexible, nurturing, then I become authoritarian, controlling, and cold, right? I'm kind of retracting away that to get what I want, which is acceptance from my peer group, from my parents or whatever. So you get into the opposite of that constellation of attributes that we consider as feminine. The opposite of that, retracting away from that, is actually what we think of. It actually looks very much identically like the toxic masculine. It has nothing. Toxic masculinity, in my mind, has nothing to do with the masculine. It has to do with the retraction from those characteristics that are traditionally called feminine. Does that make sense?
Wait.
Mhm.
Yes, but no. I mean, what you said makes perfect sense. But I always like to use this as an example. There's a little over 300 people on, and I guarantee you, if I can understand, I'm kind of a safety net. If I can understand it, anybody else can. So drill down a little bit on that. I was following you, but I wasn't.
Sure. Okay. So if we think of like characteristics that are, thought of traditionally as feminine characteristics, divine feminine characteristics. Psychology does an attribute called communion, which are related to these. So intuition, as opposed to logic, right? Women, intuition is more aligned with the feminine. Logic is more aligned with the masculine, traditionally, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Not to say that women can't be logical or men can't be intuitive. We're all both. But so flexibility, expressiveness, gentleness, healing, healing capacity. You think of like nurses or people, care providers,
Exactly.
vulnerability, emotional capacity. Those are kind of thought of as more divine feminine characteristics. In psychology, might call them things associated with communion with others, right?
Yes.
So if we retract against those, we're told a little boy, let's just take this story of a little boy. We're retracting against being intuitive, flexible, expressive, gentle, healing. I can't be those things because God's going to call me a pussy, right? Okay. So I must be the opposite of those things. So instead of being intuitive, I become authoritarian. I start to defer and think about authoritarian things instead of being flexible, I start being controlling or value that. Instead of being expressive, I'm cold. Instead of being gentle, I'm violent. Instead of being healing, I'm cruel, right? That constellation of attributes, right? Authoritarianism, controlling, cold, violent, cruel. Those are the opposite of those characteristics that we think of as traditionally feminine, right? Intuition, flexibility, expressiveness, gentleness.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
Now here's where it gets interesting. Okay. So, let me finish that point. Those toxic characteristics that we call toxic masculinity, but are actually a retraction from those feminine, more traditionally identified with feminine characteristics. Right? We call that toxic masculinity. And people who display those toxic masculine characteristics cause a lot of the problems in society. They're the people that are going to prison, causing crimes, being violent, all that kind of stuff. So they get a lot of attention. So let's make the logical jump to what are the masculine traits that are traditionally more associated with masculinity. So we have your logic, you have your responsibility, self-aware, honor, right? Unflappability in the face of danger.
Yeah.
Now, there is an archetype known as the wounded feminine that actually manifests as the opposite of all those masculine traits. So there is a way of being that is, let's say you take a little girl, right, and you tell her she likes to do sports or all these kind of stuff. Excuse me. She likes to be active in the world, a little masculine. And parents are like, that's not very ladylike. We need you to be demure and soft and all this kind of stuff. So the girl's like, I can't do in the world, because I'm being told not to do. So she retracts away from that, capacity, that agency, we use that word agency, and goes into this, irrational victim mentality, unarticulated sense of self, ineffectual, hysterical, right? Hysterical used to be a diagnosis that was given to women in the early part of the last century. That lack of capacity turns out to be the opposite of the masculine sort of attributes. So you basically have four quadrants. You can move someone from, the positive manifestation of traditionally masculine traits and bring them into like kind of a victimhood mentality. And if you think of the word agency that we talked about before, and you think of that as being, masculine, and you retract away from that, what's the opposite of agency? Victim mentality, right? So, but these people don't cause trouble, right? These are the cat ladies, the hoarders, those kind of people that are kind of stuck in like everything is happening to me because they've been robbed of their agency, right? So you have these four things, and and we see these in these patterns. We can see them in some societal institutions. think of the military, for example. The military is hyper masculine in the positive way, right? Logical, unflappable, honor is a huge deal in the military.
Oh, big.
Direct courage, right? Courage, that's all there. It's also needs to be, due to why their reason for being, they need to be authoritarian. So there's a top-down hierarchy, controlling, violent, right? The military, by definition, you're going out to take control of something else. Now we can contrast that with the ideal sort of hospital, right? Hospital or healing center. Again, logic, right? This person's presenting with something. Let's go through the list. Logic, you think of the ER room, unflappables, shit's going down. Someone's having a heart attack and they got to do it. And the doctors have to be calm, right? They're talking, they're calm, but there's emergency happening. So all these masculine characteristics, action oriented. There's courage that happens in the hospital, but then there's that also that other part that the military. The military does have this, right? There's a lot of kindness and stuff, brotherhood amongst men taking care of this stuff. But I'm just talking about the stereotypical sort of concepts here.
Yeah.
The hospital setting also has that divine feminine, where it's just intuitive. Sometimes the doctor or somebody's like, this doesn't make sense. This set of symptoms doesn't quite align with the textbook definition. I think I'm going to use my intuition. Healing, emotional, nurturing. You think about the hospital taking care of people. So in the ideal sense, of course, we got this modern medical system that could do better. But in any case, you see these patterns happening. And so when I say embracing, or I hear this question about start embracing conscious masculinity, what can men do? Is to really, really focus on what is masculine. These kind of things that I think most men don't have a problem with, is being direct and courageous and logical and stuff like that. But really, I think it's embracing those other softer factors and recognizing them in ourselves as men and being able to express those, because we're just going to be more whole beings when we can be fully expressive in our capacities. Call it masculine, call it feminine, whatever it is. You want to be whole. You want to be kind to other people. You want to be action oriented in the world. You want to do well for the betterment of yourself, for others, for your families, for all sentient beings. Really, you want to try and make the world a better place.
Let me ask you something. It looks like we're staying on the masculine question mark through the rest of the show. We may get back to my favorite, ayahuasca, but right now we're here. And I don't think there's any questions like this on here. But I am 62. I'll be 63 in June, and over the last just building up. There's been such a shift in societal expectations for the roles. And I'm not talking about the whole trans thing or anything like that. I'm just traditional roles. More and more and more women, awesome, are getting more and more freedom, and more at that same time, men are more and more looked at as all men toxic. And what you were talking about that's a great description. I've been holding on to this question because I really was kind of curious about that. How does the last 10 years, let's say, or how especially now, transitioning from one administration to the other, don't want to make this a political thing, although if you want to, I always love that. But we've got I told you we get goofy here, man. I just like how I'm just a dude trying to get a message across, and I love having fun doing it. But has this last period of time, especially younger guys, because they're growing up with everybody looking at them as toxic, no matter what they are. They're male, they're toxic. How does that? I mean, in what you're talking about, that's probably a big deal in being able to open up men again, because they just started opening up, and then me included, and now all of a sudden everybody's toxic. It's going away, I get it, but what is that toxic bent that or effect that men have, or do they?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry.
I want to make sure I
kinda
get
went-
to. I want to make sure I answer the question and just don't go on in my.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So society is kind of deemed, at least for the last number of years. Like I said, it started and then it grew. The last 4 years, society is any male, or yeah, I think any male, maybe just white males, but they're toxic in their masculinity. Don't be that way in society. You know, they're being told growing up, the boys. 2-point question. 2-point question. I'm going to get you back with a 2-pointer. One, does this system as one tool, will that make you a male more even with themselves in always feeling guilty for the last, I don't know, however many years? And two, does that open up the mind to make it go away, or is there lingering effects, or am I making too big a deal about this?
What do you talk, when you say that? What are you talking about specifically? Will that make it go away? Are you talking about expanded states?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The program here, because you're working within your inner self, right? I mean, that's the whole idea about the program. Whether it's the upcoming female, the current.
I got
all right.
So 2 things have happened, I think, in my assessment of the situation with regards to what you're discussing about, like the kind of labeling all men as toxic, right? So first thing that's happened is birthed what you call the red pill movement, which I'm super anti, which is this kind of misogynistic kind of movement of kind of taking red pill movement. If you look it up, it's basically these it's kind of a political movement of a subgroup, a small group of men who want to impose their will on women, bring back hyper traditional patriarchic sort of a situation to the, they use words like, well, I'm not gonna use the word because we'll have to define it, but they'll say that women are just gold diggers and kind of stuff, and you got to, treat them as such, and all this kind of, it's all bullshit. But it spawned from a retraction away from diminishing the masculine, right? And actually it kind of embraced toxic masculine traits. So that's the red pill movement. And then amongst the younger kids, I think is many young men and guys that are just like, hey, I'm just being me kind of thing. Like, I'm not trying to hurt anybody. Like, what is all this? Why am I being labeled this way? It's led to a kind of off balancing of men where we just don't kind of know what is our role in the world.
Where do we fit?
So where do we fit in this modern world? And it's softening up against, because obviously the Me Too movement and all this kind of stuff illuminated a bunch of stuff that shouldn't have been going on at all, some pretty bad stuff. And then it got a little bit too much. Some people got swept up into it that probably shouldn't have gotten swept up. And now it's kind of getting back to balance as things do. Pendulum swings in both ways.
Dramatically in each way. We all live here, and the pendulum keeps going back and forth like that.
Absolutely.
Drives me nuts. Most of us live here.
Right. So how does a retreat like this, or an experience like this, or like working one-on-one, or any sort of transformational thing do? You stop caring so much. One of the things that is kind of across the board, you stop caring a lot about the bullshit about what other people think, and that means society. You start to align, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever. You start realizing, just like with your story you were telling me before in the green room, like you had your own expanded state experience through your motorcycle accident and stroke and whatnot, which I'm sure I'm not disclosing anything personally because I'm sure you've discussed it with the audience. You had
all the time, including the mental breakdown.
Yeah. So
not afraid of that anymore.
A lot of people have had these sorts of experiences, not using things. And what it does is it brings them down to what's important. And when you realize what's important, gives a shit about what all these other people are thinking. Let me just be me, and brings clearer awareness as to who you want to be in the world. Am I operating from a belief that I have about stuff, or am I operating because this is the way I want to be in the world? Like you were saying, I want to be, I'm going, this is 2.0 version of myself. Because hey, I see what's saying, the joy that you had, talking about your granddaughter and stuff like that. Hey, that expressiveness, that joy of life and all that kind of stuff, that's more accessible after the fact. Because, I used to not dance. I used to, unless I had a couple of pops in me. And I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I'm going to dance. I don't know.
Yeah. And men have always trapped themselves, I think. And some of it's society and some of it's just lack of knowledge. And this journey, that 4 days, that opens up also not only the walls that are up to keep you from a male or anybody from being authentic, and versus now starting to utilize these tools to be able to do it. And you're right. And I mentioned producer Barbie a lot, but during that time that to lean into that a little bit, during that time when I had my break, I mean, there was a month-ish. I couldn't leave my I couldn't leave my apartment. I'm a salesperson. I have a machinery business, but I went all the way down. And Barbie says it's because I compartmentalized all the way through my life and just kept stuffing them in and not dealing with it. And then at some point, that life experience that you're talking about happened, and it changes everything.
Yeah. You think about the shattering of ego. Ego is a loaded word. Ego is a loaded word, right? We have all these things.
It is.
They like have ego, and you think of someone being egotistical. That's a little part of what ego is. In the end, ego is basically that which gives us the sense of separation between ourselves and the rest of creation, right? It's just like if you didn't have any ego, zero ego, right? You wouldn't know where to put the spoon to feed yourself. You need to be able to direct yourself. And then that gets blown out into all these other protective mechanisms that I can't do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to be this way. I'm perceived this way. I'm worried about what this person thinks. The ego is trying to protect you, just like the ego is trying to feed you.
Sure.
And then things that served you when you were younger, maybe ideas, they no longer serve you as you're an adult, grown ass man. Right. And then, but you still maintain, not you. But
did you say grown ass man?
Yeah. An adult, right? Adulting, right?
Exactly. A grown ass man. Love it.
Yeah. These patterns of behavior, these beliefs that we kind of like put on ourselves for a protective measure, right? I have to be this way. I have to do these things. It might not serve us anymore when we're in adulthood. But we still believe them. We still operate in life through them. Still, personalize things. We still make assumptions about others based on our own thing. We don't give people the grace and compassion that they deserve, oftentimes, and thus personalize things. Or, for example, and through these experiences, like you had, like I've had, all of a sudden all this stuff. There's like clarity. It's like looking through the pain. A window pane of your life being the ego, and it's gotten cluttered with bird poo and rocks and things, and you're kind of looking at the world and these kind of
makes sense.
These expanded states, whether they be from a nervous breakdown or through an entheogenic or a psychedelic sort of experience, or even some types of holotropic breath work. There's a lot of ways in long-term meditation. They
What's
clear that window. Holotropic breath work.
Yeah, what is that?
It's something.
I mean, I can guess.
It's a type of breath work that works. There's a whole bunch of these sort of breath work modalities where you hyperventilate for about 45 minutes.
Really? Straight?
Straight, yeah. Your mouth got fairly uncomfortable, but the body changes, and you can have an equivalent psychedelic experience, expanded state experience. I've seen some very powerful. I've had powerful breathwork experiences where it's like, whoa, it just changes. Holotropic breathwork is the most well known by Stanislav Grof. He used to be a researcher in the 50s on LSD, and then when it was made illegal.
Yeah.
He went out and looked for other methods to create expanded states, and he discovered, some yogic practices about these hyperventilating sort of breath techniques, and brought those, put a huge training. There's a huge movement about holotropic breath work now. It's expanded, so there's other trainings that people can take: somatic breath work, pause breath work, all these different programs basically teach very similar things, just what their container is and the extensiveness of the training is what differs, but it's all basically hyperventilating for 30 to 45 minutes. And the the emotions that come out, you can have a purge, not necessarily a vomit purge, but shakes, sweats, tears, laughing, crying, emotional release, shaking. All these things can happen just with the breath. So
right.
That's
impressive as hell. And that's a great thing. You hear about certain things, but in this conversation, we're able to peek through the window of several different availabilities to everybody that are there for our tools. We're probably going to go over an hour here. You okay with that? You have any time? Huh?
I have no time. I don't have another thing to do for a little while.
All right, awesome. Because we still have about 5, something like that. And sometimes these guys mess with me. And when you're wrapping up, they say, wait, I wanted to hear this. So anyway, we're definitely going to probably go. Okay, cool. Me too. Are you guys out there? Give us a thumbs up, so we can go, yeah, to them. All right, here we go. So start embracing let's see, what are some small ways? Like what you're talking about is a traditional passage to go in that next phase of life that you've now made the passage into manhood for men. And so there's that, but in addition to, because that's not a small way, that's a life changer, right? Maybe people are thinking about it and lead up to it and want to still, they've got an appointment in a month, but they want to do some small things to kind of help that. What do you recommend?
All right, this is more general than just embracing conscious masculinity. The super good question coming up there, super important. We'd love to address
it
that
is,
as well.
yeah.
But what can you do? I think the thing that everybody can do, both to embrace your conscious masculinity, your conscious femininity, all parts of being, is to slow down in everything you do. I tell my kids, don't rush through something, because when you rush through it, it's going to take you longer. It's going to take you longer than if you just did it carefully the first time. But when I mean slow down,
you miss stuff, right?
You miss stuff, you make mistakes, you rush through it, and then you have to do it over again. But that's on one level. But literally in everything you do, slow down. When you're having a conversation with somebody, slow down, leave some pauses, let them think, and go into any interaction with somebody with curiosity and try and drop judgment, right? Because you don't know what people have been through. As soon as you can do that, curiosity, lack of judgment, you're going to go a long way towards interfacing better with others in the world. And the slowing down thing gives you time to find out what's going on in here. So oftentimes we're having a conversation and we're anticipating what we're going to say before the other person has finished and whatnot, or we're doing stuff and we're like not paying attention to our internal world because we're rushing through something. When you slow down, everything's about awareness, right? Self-awareness. So straight up self-awareness. And you can't be self-aware. You can't pay attention to what's the emotional, what emotion is behind my behavior right now. What emotion is behind what I'm saying right now. If you slow down, you can identify it. And we know that our emotions color our thinking. So the slower you can go, the more self-aware you can be by slowing down. These things will start, you'll get a lot more awareness as to why you're doing things without any expanded states.
Wow.
The number one thing is slow down and try and pay attention to what's going on in here.
That is impressive. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And society, as we've gone, we've more and more and more tried to move faster. Like you said, when you slow down, it's like a baseball player, right? Or an athlete of any kind. When they get better at things, all of a sudden the game, or in this case, life, the life experience starts to come to you. And when you slow down, you see the things that, like you said, you miss. And that's a great feeling. Why don't you just jump right in here to as far as community goes, because like you said, this is a great question. And I don't think anybody could doubt that, because it makes a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's what's it called? The men's crisis these days, right? I think that's what it's been termed. And it's basically men are feeling isolated because of all the things that we were talking about before. Lack of even knowing how to be, knowing what's okay to say and what not to say. So it's really, really, really important for men to find community. How they do that, there's a bunch of ways, but what role does it play? I think it's critical, not just for men, but for women, for everybody. It's like, and that's one of the things that, like at MOI, that we made a big focus on, because we could have just done retreats and just like left it at that. But we recognize the importance of having a community of like-minded, not like-minded, but of supportive brothers, right? So when we get into that, when we're done with the retreat, we get put into the community, and there's an opportunity to share about what's going on in our lives, on a monthly by monthly basis. People meet up outside of formal men of integrity gatherings. There's the Telegram group that I mentioned before. Like, we have opportunities to be in community with one another, with people who have gone through the same experience. And so it's a pretty tight knit group. Not everybody participates as much as, some people are really, like every situation. If you go to church, some people are there every week. Some people are at all the, bake sales and whatnot, and some people show up once a month. So, but the opportunity is there. And even, I believe even the folks the folks in our community who don't show up to every meeting, they know that they can. They know that if they're going through something, they can.
That's powerful.
And just knowing that you have somewhere to go to share and to be vulnerable with, where people aren't going to judge you, where people are going to interface with you with kind of a sense of curiosity and compassion, that's super powerful.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's kind of that is the theme of this show, Insights and Straight Talk, because COVID kind of pushed it all the way over, but we've been building into not knowing our community, not being involved in our community, going out and facing things on our own within our own family. And we constantly on here talk about create a vibe, that people are attracted to. And with experience, that then life kind of slows down, because you're able to slow down and make things through. And it's just such a more excellent life. I forgot the word I was trying to get to. What role the community here? We didn't hit the community yet, did we?
We've been talking about community for the last minute. There was another question that popped up about, someone who's scared. This is such a good question.
It is scared but curious, or really wants it, but they're scared of it.
Okay.
Excellent question.
So I love this question.
Thank you, Ariel. Sorry.
Yeah. I would say that being nervous about trying these things, like, remember, with the support of a guide or therapist or somebody who does this, who could hold that container, right?
Right.
Scared is just not. We're scared about anything we don't know. We don't know what's on the other path. Someone explained to me, like, how do you explain these expanded state experiences to somebody who hasn't had one? And the funny kind of tongue-in-cheek sort of response that I've heard that is kind of interesting is, like, how do you explain what having sex is with a partner to somebody who's never had it? Like, you have words, right? You can try and like describe it, and then it's only through the experience itself that you realize, what a profound, powerfully beautiful experience it can be, for if it's, on that balance, or what the experience can be. Now, with regards to these experiences, I can tell you that it's whatever comes up in these experiences, 99% of the time, it's something you already knew, right? It's more of a feeling of remembering than it is a feeling of like blah, blah, blah. So if you think about your mind and your heart, right? The mind is at least in our Western, it's like bang, 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 bang. It's so much louder than this space, than the heart space. And the heart space is always speaking to us anyway. But oftentimes, like, the ego is the bouncer of the heart, right? It's pushing, no, don't listen to that guy or that gal. Don't listen to this part. This part doesn't make as much noise as this part, chattering. And what we know that expanded states do, whether it be psychedelics, holotropic breath work, or the breath work modalities or meditation, it quiets this part. What happens when you it quiets the mind. For people who are listening, just listening. It quiets the mind. And so just like if we had a room that had like some, I like heavy metal, but let's say heavy metal blasting, and then had some like maybe some folk music blasting, and the heavy metal is turned up, the heavy metal, let's say, is your mind, and it's just like loud. You can't hear the other thing, but these expanded states turn down that loud noise of the mind. And then what's left is to be able to hear from your heart space. And why I think the experience is mostly of remembering, like, oh yeah, that's right, I want to do that, is because it's been there all along. It's just been drowned out by the noise of your mind, right? That's how I think about it.
It's pushed into the dark, the shadowy, dark edges of our thinking, with everything else pushing it out, right?
Yeah. It's hard to hear their internal voice. Something that happens a lot with on our retreats, and like, we, just to be very clear, we don't preach to not do anything, but all these things that guys do for to get dopamine hits, like playing video games, alcohol, pot, weed, porn, all those kind of stuff, they're all substitutes for being satisfied in a relationship, right? And they
100%.
don't get into a relationship because they're I got my video games and my marijuana or whatever. But oftentimes, if you ask anybody who's excessively uses all these kinds of stuff, they have moments where they're telling themselves, "Oh, you really got to cut down on this. You really got to make these changes in life," but they get drowned out by the like I need to do this because of blah blah blah. Or I'm just having, or by the excuses, by the mental chatter that keeps us in there. And so many of our guys, I would say about 90% of our guys have been to the retreats, have heard the voice of what they need to do to be better in the world so loudly that they've actually stopped one or more behaviors that they wanted to stop, but they hadn't stopped. They just find and I think, like, for me, when I started with my first ayahuasca retreat, something that I noticed was, I used alcohol, like to drink, right? Party with friends and stuff like that. But I had to realize that there was some kind of internalized shame that I wasn't even aware of, that I was using to cover up. I was using, alcohol in social situations to kind of cover up that sense of shame. And in the deep dive with the ayahuasca, I realized I couldn't identify what that shame was tied to. And it made the conscious decision, hold on a second, that's been banging around in there outside of my awareness. And I wasn't even and it's been, impacting, my use of some, alcohol. Let's just drop that shame. And then I stopped drinking for a super long time.
Awesome, man. Such a big deal.
It is.
I can tell some people are really interested in this, and not that I couldn't tell before, but the questions that are kind of the next few questions are people being curious about, what about being nervous and getting into it? We already talked about this. Here is Damien. Thank you. How did your family handle it? You can understand the question. Mm-hmm. Somebody's being driven down this path, and if their family isn't on the same journey at that point, which is not a big deal, but how did your family respond when you started taking down this guided path?
Right, that's a great question, and it's something that we talk about at the last day of the retreat. Is that you will come back a different person. right? But you're going to look the same, right? It says don't, even though you're now experiencing the world in a different way with a lot less mental chatter and clutter, the universe is going to try and pull you back, not intentionally, but that means all your people are going to be like, hey, like if you decided not to drink, for example, people, I mean, we know this because people who are stop drinking, your community of people who are used to interfacing with you in a certain way are going to try and pull you to stay in that way, and to just notice that's happening, and to notice that's happening, and to just be true to yourself in terms of like, hey, I made this decision, I'm going to be this way, whatnot. In my case, my kids were too young to really notice, so they only know me as the way I've been, really like pretty, very emotionally stable, very kind of like open to them having, their emotions honored, and I'm just like they know me the way I am now. They don't know me before, when I was much more of an asshole, for lack of a better word.
I know the feeling you're talking about right now. I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're right. Your children have a better, it's always great that when somebody pulls what they're doing together in the ways that you are, it's always great to have, not that history with your children, have a history that's, how we're raising children. We're not just, we don't just have children, we parent them, right?
Right.
And that's awesome. I mean, that's awesome about that experience for your kids. So Clive here has a really interesting question, that right now you have men's groups and you're having women's groups. Is that should somebody who's a married couple go side by side and have the experience, or does it matter? It probably does matter, right?
Great question.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's very important when you're talking about couples work, is if you're past a certain, if your relationship is good, what I mean is good, you both are generally satisfied in the relationship, there might be a little bit of things that you can work on. This sort of work is fantastic. Is fantastic because it, especially, MDMA, there's a lot of research and stories of MDMA, which is an empathogen, heart-opening sort of medicine. It doesn't have visionary states and stuff like that, but it's very heart-opening. It's called an empathogen, makes you empathic towards others, right? So if you don't have a lot, if you're just trying to improve an already decent relationship, decent or good relationship, work with a guide as a couple. I work with a psychotherapist that together we work with couples doing this, but it's not something that's like my main project, but it's available, and there's other people that work with couples. It's great for deepening relationship. I have, my partner and I'm absolutely madly in love with her, and we have used to do quarterly MDMA experiences. Have a protocol and stuff like that. But anyway, it's really deep in our relationship. Now we hardly do it. We just don't need it. But if you are, battling it out every day, the resentment and contempt has already infiltrated. This isn't gonna help that. You really need to start from a good, it's set and setting. If your set is you're angry, contempt, you need to get to a place already of kind of being able to like have empathy towards one another before this can really expand and blossom the relationship, I believe. Because one of the things that these medicines, these experiences do is they sort of, remember we're talking about turning down the volume on the chatter here. It also turns up the volume on what's down here. So if there's a lot of resentment, it's going to come up, right? So
that makes sense.
We've been asked a lot of times if we could do retreats with couples, and I think we're thinking about what the protocols would be. but this would be a serious protocol, is to make sure that the couples are in a pretty good space that want to get to a great space, rather than people are working on, like, we're towards the end of our marriage, we're thinking about breaking up, we can't stand each other. This is not.
This is the last saving. This is that last Hail Mary.
Yeah, this I don't.
Work.
I could be wrong about this, so I'm just saying I could be wrong about this. Maybe there's a way that this thing could work. I just don't know. And I've heard of couples retreats going south really quick, where there's a couple that is in this kind of final stage of the relationship, and they kind of take over the thing. There's big blow up and fight like that. So beautiful question. I think this can be the most powerful thing to make a good relationship great. I think, really, I truly believe that with all my heart. But I'm skeptical, cautiously skeptical that these sorts of modalities will take a relationship that is already on its tail end of working and making it great, or making it palatable or tolerable.
I get it. So you've got to come to a space within a space, because it's going to amplify. You check into yourself, but also you're checking in to a situation that, like you said, you're battling with him or her every day, and that's just going to amplify that. That is precious.
It may amplify that. I've seen it amplify.
Yeah, it's a risk. It's a risk.
There'll probably be some other guys that might tell you differently. I don't know. I think you got to get to a certain place. Just like if you're extremely, like, just in the throes of like a deep, set and setting, right? They always talk about those two things. The setting is, a safe setting. You're in a contained room where you have all your needs being met. There's someone taking care of you, all that kind of stuff. And the mindset is also important. If you're in the throes of an anxiety or a panic attack, you don't want to be having one of these experiences in the middle of that, right? You want to get to a place where you're all right. And if you're like the woman that put out there, are you, I'm a little scared or anxious if this is right for me. It's like, nervousness is different from anxiety, is different from panic. Nervousness and excitedness are very similar in sort of the sensations in the body. It's normal to be nervous about something that you're not, that you haven't experienced. You're going to go on a roller coaster. Am I nervous or am I excited? I don't know. Kind of both. And so it's totally normal to be nervous / a little bit scared, trepidatious about having one of these experiences. But don't let that be that which dissuades you. But again, you need to do this in an intentional and cautious way with somebody who can support you.
Wow. Oh my goodness. This did not disappoint, my friend. And Tony, well, you're better at these words. I try to add sounds that aren't there just because I do. Am I right? And Tony? Giggle. Anyway, so thank you very much for this comment. Thank you for holding space for these wonderful conversations. And I need you to help me correct your name, because we've had like 3 similar, where you're investigating your internal self, and she's been on a couple of these, and I only know that because I have. Help me, please. I want to say your name right, ma'am. You got a lot of fans here. And that's not surprising. It's a message that's important for the human being, for the human experience. It's critical, because for so long we've accepted having different things, including, which all are combining to not have us know ourselves better. And you're always a better person if you're authentic, right? So like you said, be curious, but not judgmental. And with that, anything we missed that you wanted to go over? And the questions look like, I'm surprised this long there's that many people here. So obviously there's some interest still. Have we missed anything that you want to cover over, or you want to go over and cover?
I just want to reiterate and double down on the idea of if you're interested in trying one of these things, or trying an experience like this, whether it be in Peru or be in the United States, be in one-on-one or a retreat setting, like, take your time, There's no rush. There's a lot of practitioners, and they very much they very much in style and very much in. And there's a lot of variance amongst all these different things. Find something, just like as if you were finding a therapist, a regular therapist. Really, you got to find somebody that you fit with, that meets you where you are, right? That you got to feel comfortable, and they need to not. There needs to be no like sketchy vibe in terms of like you don't feel like they're being fully disclosing about their process or what they do. They should, really pay attention. And that's part of paying attention too. When you're when you're interviewing a guide or a therapist or a retreat center, really make sure that all your answers are answered. If you have a question, there should be no hesitation. And make sure that wherever you go, that there is an intake process, that people are asking you questions about safety and in your health conditions and your psychological state and all that kind of stuff, that they're not just, this is very common in retreats in South America. All comers, you pay your fee, you don't even have to get interviewed. It's very common. Not with anyone that's going to anyone that has an exclusion criteria that's at like a minimum. You can even ask, do you have an exclusion criteria? What do I have to say to not be able to go to this retreat? If they don't know, that's a problem. Not just for you, but it's a problem because that means everyone else that's at the retreat also came in without an exclusion criteria. And you might get somebody.
Good point.
Right? Super important that your safety is number one, and that you're paying attention to those things, and that your questions are being answered, and that you feel that you got a good vibe with the situation, with the guide, with the therapist. The same thing with the therapist. Not all therapists mesh with all people. I tried therapy once and it didn't work for me. I didn't really feel understood. And maybe, shop around. So that's what I would say. Really have your questions.
By the way, pardon me?
To really make sure that your questions are fully answered.
Gotcha.
And that the person you're working with is able to answer your questions in a satisfactory manner.
Makes 100%, because this is an important thing, and it's also a thing that you need a professional. There are certain things that you should have a professional always. There are certain things you absolutely need a professional to make any kind of proper impact. As I'm going to put you into the green room if you're all good, and I'm going to close out the session. I should have mentioned this earlier, but would you put your contact information in? I guess can only do the private chat. I don't know why that's the case, but private chat, I'll copy it and paste it onto the comments, because invariably, I mean, we get hundreds and thousands of people afterwards coming back.
Sure. So where do you want me to put it?
Where your private chat is there?
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so put it in there. I'll copy and paste it into the comments that you can see here. Okay. And at the end of the day, any final words and a big wave to your new fans?
No, thank you for the interest, and thank you for having me out here. Fun. My dog's going bananas in the background there.
Yeah. Mine do that every once in a while. They're over there.
What's going on? Let's see. I'm putting in the contact information there. These are the.
You got it right there. Let me do this. Give me a second.
Oh, I do have one final thing to say.
All right.
If anybody's interested in learning more, please reach out. I have you can get an appointment on my website, and we can talk about what's right for you or what's not right for you, and answer any questions. I hope you can tell that I love talking about this stuff. So
absolutely,
it doesn't feel onerous to me. It's actually a pleasure, an honor, and a joy to communicate this sort of information to folks. So I really love it. So,
I love it, man. And we got your information here, website and so forth. Come see Michael's space there, because I know I am, because I've been looking for the ability to go the next level. Michael, if you don't mind, just give a wave. I'll close this out really quick. I got another one coming up in 40 minutes now.
Sure.
Big wave. See ya. All right. So as I was expecting, that was a very, very good show, very informative. And it's crazy because, you know, you go back a couple of decades and these kind of programs, like he said, in Peru, they ship you in, ship you out. There was never really, but this is professional. This is taking assistance the next level higher. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through discussions that are coming up because I have one coming up in about 40 minutes. So I gotta do a bunch of post-production. With that said, I got to tell you guys, I am out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.